The upcoming debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Trump is set for Tuesday. Now, on top of muted mics, the debate will have no opening statements, no studio audience either, and no pre-written notes for the candidates. Joining us now is to discuss is Mike Leon. He's the Director in Policy and Strategy at the Free and Equal Elections Foundation. How are you doing today, Mike?
Good to see you, Don. Everything's good.
All right, so what do you think about the muted microphones rule? Is that going to impact the dynamic between the debate between Harris and Trump?
Yeah, I think for sure it's definitely going to. I was vocal on my show, Can We Please Talk, that this is the format that I think we should have going forward if we really truly want to hear the candidates' policy positions, right? Because we saw in 2020 that without muted microphones, we saw back talking, over talking, the moderators being too influential in it. And lost in all of this was the fact that the former president, Donald Trump, and Chris Wallace, the Fox News moderator at the time, were just going back and forth. And so we actually couldn't hear true policy discussions. Now, will we ever get true policy discussions in an hour and a half time? I don't know. But I do think that muted microphones, no studio audience that's clapping and taking away time from a candidate answering a question or a rebuttal to something another candidate said. I think it is the actual format to give the candidates time for the American people there's a lot of people that are truly in this undecided category. Give them time to listen to both of them, answer questions on the different issues and topics that the moderators are going to bring up. So I think it will have a huge impact, and we already saw it change the landscape of American politics on June 28th in that debate.
So are you saying this will benefit one more than the other, or is going to be beneficial to both equally?
Yeah, I mean, that's the million-dollar questions, right, Don? Because if you heard the tea leaves, right, the Trump campaign kind of wanted it. It all depended on what Donald Trump was interested in doing in terms of the muted microphones. He said in a campaign stop that he agreed to the format already. He's comfortable with doing it. Kamala Harris obviously was not a part of the debates. She has never done a format like this. So we'll see how this will impact her. But I do think that it makes the most sense for the American people to listen to a true discussion. I think it probably hurts Kamala Harris the most because Donald Trump in 2020, a lot of Americans saw the way he was kind of stepping over the conversation, regardless about how you feel about him, stepping over the conversation that was happening between the candidates. And then the moderator had to get involved. So it just kind of sidetracked the entire point of having a debate. The debate is supposed to be between the candidates, not between the moderator and the candidates. And that became the focal point of the story. And I think that it kind of hurts Kamala Harris because without muted microphones, we could have that impact where Donald Trump could, talk over her or do certain things that could sway voters in a potential direction. So I'm going to say that, it's interesting that they're doing it, but I think it's for sure the format that we should have going forward if we want to hear true policy discussion and visions from these candidates.
All right, so on the debate itself, what does each candidate need to do? What do they need to demonstrate to voters? What should their objective be, right, in this debate?
Yeah, another great question. The latest episode of my show, I was speaking with somebody from the AP News that was covering voter issues in a key swing state in Georgia. And the discussions there around Kamala Harris were truly around economic policy, right? Like this capital gains tax. I know I've been getting asked questions a lot about it from voters down here in Florida where I live that want to learn more about this. How often do you know the policy positions of the vice president? They tend to adopt the positions of the president, right, in terms of the ticket. So will Bidenomics continue? This capital gains tax, this reduction from 44% to 28%, I believe, is something that she announced. This child tax credit of $6,000 for first-time folks that are having a kid. This home buyers credit for people that are trying to search for a home in this job market, and in this economy, she needs to kind of explain a little bit more of the economic vision. I think Israel-Gaza is going to be secondary to that because a lot of young voters, and we're already seeing some college protests starting up again on the campus of Columbia, for example. This is top of mind for folks, right? In terms of the war, the money that we spend militarily on this. So these are huge issues. And I think Kamala Harris has to address truly her visions and how we execute some of this stuff. For the Trump campaign, again, I know he's going to go back to 2019 and what the economic benefits were for every American back then, and inflation and some of those things. And that's right of him to do. But what I would pivot to is poking holes in the Biden administration and how he differs from that. You know, he mentions in the immigration part of this mass deportations, but he doesn't mention at all how we fund the departments that are keeping us safe at the border. That's been the core issue in all of this, right? It's the departments themselves are under-resourced and understaffed. The CBP agency and its union have said this numerous times. We don't have the money. We need to hire agents. We had legislation that would have done that. It didn't pass. He needs to atone for that and realize his role in that, and then figure out how to explain to people how he will tackle the crisis at the border. Not a big wall is going to be built, because that didn't happen, right? Like a majority of it didn't happen. So I think he needs to truly outline that, because immigration, economy, the wars that we're involved in, those are the three things that Americans have top of mind right now and that they list as voter issues.
As well, Mike, let me ask you this. So one uncertainty among many right now is how Harris will do. What happens if Harris underperforms?
Yeah, another great question, Don, right? Like we don't know, because look, in 2019, I can only go back to when I saw somebody on a debate stage. In 2019, in the Democratic primaries, for people who didn't watch this, you know, you had about 7, 8, 9 candidates up there. And Kamala Harris's record was really attacked, right? Tulsi Gabbard was the primary suspect in this, but she had verbal spats with Joe Biden, with Bernie Sanders, with Elizabeth Warren. They felt her policy positions were not progressive enough. And they were, to be honest with you, a little bit more conservative leaning in nature. And she didn't perform well, and we saw her stock dip, and she dropped out before the primaries actually got underway and votes started on the Democratic side. So she failed there. But in 2020, in the vice presidential debate, she did pretty well against Mike Pence. They both actually did decently well battling the policy positions. And I think a lot of people came away from that saying, boy, maybe these two folks should be running the country as opposed to the two folks that we currently have in office. So back to your overarching question, I think this is pivotal for her because, 51 million people watched that June debate. I expect a lot more are going to be watching it, given how much ABC News is available to folks outside of traditional cable packages and stuff like that. And I think you're going to see this is the biggest stage for her to be able to get her message forward. If she doesn't hit, to me, on certain things and how we implement them and how she differs from the current administration, because the big talking point is going to be, you're the vice president. Why aren't we doing some of the things that you have mentioned? Have you spoken to the president about some of these things you want to implement? And why aren't we doing some of these things? And I think those are fair questions, but she needs to truly delineate how she differs from the Biden administration, what she would do different, and how we execute it. And I think it's going to be pivotal for her. This is the biggest stage. And obviously, I don't want to add more pressure to it, but I think we all know that this is going to be the biggest watched event of the fall political season and may determine the outcome of the election in November.
All right, Mike, terrific analysis today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.